Okay, well, so, oh, there's still, well, I'll talk a bit until you put the, okay, sorry. Until my video is there, my presentation is there, I'll begin. It's not casual that I made this presentation, this blinded talk. I want to talk to you because this is an Ecuadorian experience, and I have a curiosity. Is maybe this experience that we had being able to put on trial several Chinese companies and Chinese executives could be somehow models to apply in other parts of the world, of the globe. That's my interest in this presentation. I'm going to present an Ecuadorian case, but it's more important than the details of the case is these patterns that we can find in how corruption works, but also in how we could think of ways of counteract against corruption, and the corruption linked to and corruption. I don't. Do I need this because there's few people? Okay. Corruption is when a huge actor as China is involved, it seems that renders you like powerless and unable to contest or to respond. So this is a case of a small country. Ecuador is a small country in South America, 17 million people. And this is the presentation of Chinese underpinnings of state corruption in Ecuador. Okay, first of why is an underpinning? Since I translate this myself, I was kind of aware of the words that I was using. So I'm using the second definition of Webster's. It's something that serves a foundation. So in the case of China, it takes two to tango. China is a power that have a corrosive impact on the countries that deals with, but it takes two to tango. That is worst when you have countries with a very low institutionality, very low democratic institutions, or when those institutions maybe were not so frail, but were under attack by, in the case of Ecuador, from 2006, for an authoritarian regime that was like destroying most of the things that we have built for decades. So the question is Ecuador an extraordinary case? It's a case where I have talked in this forum with a lot of people, and I haven't seen so many cases when small countries have put, or at least even if they are not already in the country, have put to trial Chinese executives, as Ecuador has done. So the thing is, we have several cases of corruption in Ecuador that has been brought to justice. And that's interesting because it's not just a case. I'm going to exemplify with a case that I know really a lot. But there are so many cases, as you see, with CWB. We are going to, there is a case it's a famous case, it's bribes. Our former president Correa was the main lead of this case. He has a sentence. He cannot return to the country because of this case. This is a case of bribes. And in this case, it's similar for those who are familiar to Lavallato and Odebrecht, is companies giving bribes to the political party of the president for campaign in exchange of contracts. And among these companies that are Ecuadorians and foreign are several Chinese companies that are here listed. And then the next is the Sinohydro case. We are going to talk about this Sinohydro case because it's linked with one of the major infrastructure projects that China did in Ecuador. They gave us the loan, and then we have to contract with Sinohydro for doing Coca-Cola Sinclair, which is a dump. Then this CAMC case as another bribe case, in this case with the controller. In the case of Sinohydro, the involved is the former Correa's vice president and then President Lenin Moreno. And Toachi Pilatón, that's most IRS case. And then there are cases of Ecuadorian bureaucrats and entrepreneurs accused of money laundering in the United States, but with funds originated in briberies related to the transportation of oil linked to the pre-sales to China. So China and PetroChina is linking those cases. Those cases are really actually being judged, being in trial in the United States, and most of the accused are Ecuadorians, not or even from other nationalities, not Chinese. In the case of bribes case, there was mainly Sai Rungo, which was a former ambassador of China in Ecuador and CEO of Sinohydro, and he was involved in the case, and the prosecutor charged him, but then one judge took him out of the case, so he was not judged by that case, Sai Rungo. But then Sai Rungo will appear again. So, so the Sinohydro case. Okay, Sinohydro construct, I'm not going to talk a lot about the dam. What is more interesting for me in this short time that I have allotted is to talk about how these cases went to the justice. Sinohydro built Coca-Cola Sinclair. There are a lot of problems, structural problems, engineering problems, but also a case of bribes. And this case begins with a case of bribes. A case of bribes that began with an investigative journalism, and this is the thing that I want to see if it could be modeled. That's my ambition, that other parts of the globe could somehow get some inspiration of this model. It was not thinking about a model, it happened this way, and it happened the same way with the case bribes in somehow. But it begins with an investigative journalism, reportage in digital media. It's the media that I lead, actually. Then it went to amplification in mainstream media. Mainstream media took immediately this reportage, then went to public awareness. It was matter of days, you're gonna see, and debate in the National Assembly. Then the prosecutor's office begins the investigation. An assembly member asked the prosecutor's office to join the accusation. The prosecutor's office formal charges in the case moved to the court. That last part is going to take a lot of time because those are the times of prosecution. Okay, and February 19, 2019, this is the news. It was we were talking about El laberinto offshore del círculo presidencial. We were talking about some offshore company. The authors of this reportage were my associates, Fernando Villavicencio and Cristian Zurita. And then they did this reportage. They found a lot of offshore companies that were moving money for the president, but this money came from Sinohydro. And then they drew all the relations. The reportage, you can, it's in Spanish. I'm sorry, but we were planning to translate some of our main reportage to English in this year. So when I have that, mainly the ones related to China, when I have that, I'll keep you posted. But then they even drew a timeline of how this thing had happened. So it was uncontestable. It was really good investigative journalism. You cannot put a doubt about what the journalists were publishing. So it turned out into a scandal. From March 7 to 26, 2019, there was discussion in the National Assembly of Ecuador because of the reportage. They approved a resolution pushing for the investigation in March 26. Most mainstream media were publishing about it from day one. It was a topic of social media. It was a topic in the supermarket. So if you were in the line of the supermarket, people were talking about this. And it was like really fast. We published in February, March, it was huge. And it has some political reasons because of that. Because also because Lenin Moreno was part of the Correa's alliance, and actually most of the corruption of Lenin Moreno took place not during his term as president, but as vice president of Correa. What is very cynical is that the ones who took our piece of journalism most were the Correistas, who were before that saying that we were trash journalism because of the case bribes, because when we talked about them, it was bad, but when we talked about the ex-president, now we were good journalists. So, but in this case, in March 28, the prosecutor began an investigation against the sitting president, Lenin Moreno. This assemblyman, he's a very corrupt man, but he took his opportunity to join in, but the prosecutor already have initiated investigation. And then there was, what is interesting is the follow-up. Why, you know, this 2019, and then in Ecuador, like in all our countries in Latin America, the next scandal obliterates the previous scandal. So it's like, it's a roller coaster that we lived constantly. We don't get bored, at least that's a good side. But there was something special at this case. This case had a champion. Fernando Villavicencio, which was one of the journalists that investigate this case with Christian Zurita, then went to the parliamentary and become the president of the National Assembly Fiscalization Commission, and he continued pushing from the political side, from a side that he has a lot of visibility, continued pushing for the case. So that's the follow-up. And then it was 2021, and in the cases, it took a lot of time under the prosecution because they have a part which is called, I don't know what is the word in English is indagación. They are like searching first, and it has a long period, maybe it could be even 2 years, and then it moves faster. That's the instrucción fiscal, they said. So they press charges. And the thing is that when they press charges, 2023 is this was at the beginning of this year, and this year has been, it has happened a lot of things this year in Ecuador. We had president calling the muerte cruzada, que is like cross-death, new elections and assassination, just precisely Fernando Villavicencio, who was our anti-corruption champion, he was murdered. And then, but in February, they already called press charges. And what is very interesting is who were among the people who charges were pressed. And now, there is ex-Vice President Moreno, his wife, figureheads, the one who were like behind all the things with the offshores, Moreno's this is a Patiño family, Coca-Cola Sinclair project executive, lawyers that prepare the offshore, and the Sinohydro executives. So aquí, there again is Sairungo, former ambassador of China in Ecuador, and former representative and former CEO of Sinohydro, Yang Huixiong, Sinohydro executives Song, Gu, and Lui. So this is very interesting because these top executives are being called to trial in Ecuador. Now, with all the delays and that, 2024 is the year that the trial is going to take place. So there are some questions rise there. And then it's not the only case. After that, it was the case CAMSE this year. Also, the same prosecutor office, a woman is the head of the prosecutor, Diana Salazar. Now it's CAMSE for another case of bribes, in this case against, with the former comptroller of Ecuador. So in the case of, they want some sanctions to be erased, and the comptroller allegedly erased those sanctions. So this is a new case. And again, there are people from the CAMSI that are among the people that is accused. So one of the things that let's see, how much time do I have? Yes, I'm 2 minutes long, sorry. Is there a pattern for corruption and a formula for fighting against it? That's my question, and that's what the caveat that I want to give you in order to discuss about that. No? In the case of Ecuador, we find that it's like top executives of Chinese companies bribing top. It's not, we are not just talking about a minister, we're talking about the president, the comptroller, the former vice president. That is the people that they bribe. It's not just any functionary. So that's very interesting in this pattern, and there is a pattern also of offshore companies and the way that they move the money in order to pay each other. That's interesting in the case mainly of PetroChina, and how some people have been are being judged in the United States for money laundering. Well, meanwhile, these things are happening in the assembly, are happening in the prosecution. The executive, they are moving on with the relationship with China because they have a lot of interest, no matter how they change government. We are too deep in the relationship with China, so there is apparently there is no consequence that these trials and this corruption, evident corruption, have in the relationship that the executive branch maintain with China, no matter the government. And the other thing is we will see justice. We have some problems, and this is the caveat for you, some problems with that because there is a huge push from the people from the Correa's party in order to take one of the key pieces of this possibility that is the prosecutor, Diana Salazar. But the other pieces have been working together. So there is a common, a joint push by independent investigative journalists with ties with civil society. And there is a very interesting attitude from mainstream media, because in other countries I have seen that mainstream media brushes this problem to the side. In Ecuador, they are kind of timid. They don't want to face the problem, but if you put the problem first, they go behind you. So it's very interesting, the Ecuadorian experience in that realm. Who is out of the question or out of this equation? The executive branch, the academia, the entrepreneurs. They are another story, but people, middle classes, even some popular classes, even some leftist movements that are not aligned with the Correísta movement, people are demanding to end corruption. So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if they change the prosecutor. We are just going to be a halt on this, but it's like an interest. Until here, has been an interest ride. And the other problem are the judges. Our judges are terribly corrupt. So the prosecutor have a problem with the judges that they don't follow up. And is the experience replicable in other countries? That's the caveat. That's the question that I have for you. So thank you.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
This was great. Thank you so much. So a number of thoughts. So first off, a question or two. One is the fiscal commission's changes, and that, what's your assessment of any changes that they may have made in terms of government involvement in contracts or anything like that? Were you satisfied? Basically, do you feel like there's been a bit of a problem that's been fixed? And so that's one question. The other about, is there a pattern and experience replicable to other countries? I had a very revealing conversation one time with someone who works on China-related corruption cases globally. And he said that when he enters a new country context, the first place he starts is with China, host country, friendship associations, and chambers of commerce. That ends up being the connection points for a lot of cases that end up where bribery, but also sometimes unstate-connected organized crime, things like that. But that ends up being the common point of and source of information for him and local journalists that he works with. So interesting kind of possibility to think about. And when you looked at the trial that was happening, it said that the Chinese ambassador, was he being charged or was he being just questioned? So two questions.
He's charged.
Charged.
Charged. He was mentioned. He was charged in the case bribes when Correa was the one for which Correa was condemned, but then a judge take him out of the charges, and the prosecutor was very surprised about that.
Because of diplomatic immunity and sorts?
No, because he's not an ambassador anymore. He was an ambassador, then he was a Casino Hydro executive. Actually, most of these guys are not in Ecuador anymore. But the thing that they are being named and that they are facing trial, I found it is interesting. And in bribes case, you can be judged even if you're not there, you're in absence. In Ecuador, there are many cases that you have to be present in order to be to face trial, but not in bribes case. In bribes case, you can be judged even if you have left the country. So that's an interesting point, not just for Korea, but also for the Chinese executives and companies.
Do they have an order to capture the internationally?
Well, the problem is, there is a problem with Interpol, sorry. There is a problem with Interpol because we have, Correa has been condemned by the bribes case, but the Interpol is like...
Yeah, because he has been coming to Honduras like a...
Yeah, he moves among friendly countries as he pleased. He maybe is not going to go to the United States or places like that, but he moves he goes to Mexico, Venezuela. Correa. Yeah.
The current government in Honduras. It's like it's about the business you can do with China. He's bringing ideas about how to open the economies beyond United States, but nothing happened. I mean, he's coming to Honduras. He was presented publicly like the big shock as advisor of Honduras, but nothing happened.
So the thing is, actually, if they end being condemned, maybe Ecuador has the possibility of put that to Interpol. But there's another thing, that most of these things, actually, it's the role of the executive branch once the condemned is already established. And the executive branch is like very timid with this kind of things. Say, yes, I'll do it.
What I don't understand is that why the state of Ecuador is not try to cancel the different contracts that the state of Ecuador signed with all these company. What is happening there?
Huh. Because we are indeed.
Have you heard something about coercion?
It's not just coercion. Now we are talking that we are in such a huge economic problem and not able even to pay the wages of the public workers, the public servants, for December. So they are talking about maybe we should sell in oil in advance against to China. Maybe China is still this opportunity, at least when you are. That's why I said that there is a different behavior from the executive branch. Even in the legislative branch has been a discussion about these issues, mainly when they want to attack one or the other. It's not for the Chinese involvement, it's for the Ecuadorian subjects of the investigation. But at least that is moving there. And the prosecution, yes, the prosecution has been moving the theme forward. But the problem is, I don't see that the executive branch is going to move ahead with these things because they are like trapped. They are like trapped in their relationship with China. Even if they are condemned, I can guess that our executive branch is not going to demand forcefully that they are be brought to the country. So.
Has public opinion on China gone down in Ecuador since?
There is no good public opinion on China, really. If you talk with a taxi driver, they don't have a good public opinion on China. But if you go to the Chamber of Commerce, if you go to academia, if you go to the executive branch, it's another story. Because there were stories about the abuse of China foreman against Ecuadorian workers in mines and in the hydroelectric project, and even videos. So there is, I don't know for how long, because there is a lot of push to save face from China.
I always thought that the Ecuadorian case is sort of a perfect storm kind of case, because you have Correa persecuting and going against the media outlets, in many cases also co-opting them, mostly mainstream media. You had the Chinese doing corrupt things with him. And then something kind of magical happened there, and it's investigative independent journalism. That's something that we are not seeing so much in the rest of the region, especially with a focus on China. I know you were not focusing on China. You were focusing on Korea, and China was the best friend. But, you know, actually, it always seems to me very interesting that you didn't see so many corruption cases with Venezuela, for instance, but you did find a lot of cases with China. Do you think that something like the case of Ecuador can be replicated in other countries in Latin America, mainly looking into the good side of it? I mean, looking into how we can share the experience of investigative journalism in Ecuador with the rest of the region, especially in South America? I think that the thing that I see is I would like to promote stakeholders coalitions among investigative journalists, civil society, defending democratic institutions, but also workers' union, environmentalists. To our book, there were some environmentalists, people from the childish left that Correa said, and they were very interested in what was happening because they were having problems with China in the mines. So sorry so much, time's up, they said, but we can continue discussing after her presentation with a coffee.